Special shout out to my patrons. Thanks for supporting me. If you want to join up, I'll leave a link in the description. Hey, what's up, guys? Today I'm doing the Rad 9 movies that made me list. This was started by the Rad Pack podcast, who is made up of Garrett, Mel, and Justin. I'll leave a link in the description for all their stuff. Go check them out. But yeah, they kind of put this out there as like a community thing. And the reason I decided to do it was just because I think it's like a cool, unique list, you know, because it's not your favorite movies necessarily. It's the movies that had the biggest influence on you in your childhood. And like, as I watched some of the videos, it just kind of struck me like, which came first, you know? Do you like these movies because of the kind of person you are, or to a degree, are you the person you are because these movies were always on TV when you were around, or you had it on VHS somehow or whatever? Because a lot of these movies were just like circumstantial, you know? You watched what you had back in those days. That all kind of made me want to do it, and it actually surprised me, some of the picks, because I never really thought about it in those terms. When I started picking things, a few of the choices surprised me. A couple of them, though, are real obvious. I'll get those two out of the way right off the bat, but then as we're going, the choices will get a little more unique, varied, and kind of away from horror. But yeah, the first two are horror movies, and they're real obvious. The first one is Evil Dead 2, my favorite movie of all time. I could talk for this one for probably days. I have tons of history and memories with this movie, and most importantly, it's the movie that kind of made me realize how cool movies could be. To kind of clear up what I mean, maybe like, it's the first movie where I kind of realized that camera work could take a movie to another level, where it's not just like POV perspective of a story being told. It could be like an active part of the movie and make it something more than just like a story being told, an experience kind of, if that makes sense. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. The camera work's crazy. Of course, it's the same with Evil Dead and Army of Darkness. Army of Darkness could have been on here. I just didn't want to take up a slot because I kind of consider Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness like a shared spot for my like favorite movie of all time, because it's impossible to pick one. They're the same thing to me. They're connected forever to me. But yeah, real obvious, Evil Dead 2. The next one is also very obvious. It's right there behind me. Return of the Living Dead. Best zombie movie ever made. Best 80s horror movie, possibly. I mean, you know, Evil Dead 2's right there with it. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. But yeah, I mean, one of the best 80s movies, easily. One of the best horror movies for me. Comedies. I mean, it's everything, you know? And it's like punk rock, counterculture. That's one of the things where this is one of the first movies where you have punk rockers, but they're not portrayed as like goons or minions or gang members or like secondary throwaway villains. They are mostly the main characters of the movie, and they're treated as characters. All of the kids are treated equally to like Bert and Ernie, you know, like all the non-punk rock characters. And, you know, the score and the soundtrack, one of the best soundtracks of all time. One of them, I mean, my favorite cover art of all time. And this is one of those movies that contends with Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness all the time, where I question like where those three kind of stand against each other. They're all pretty neck and neck. But yeah, Return of the Living Dead. Now we're getting a little bit more like out there and surprising. This one's not as surprising to me. It might be surprising to some people though. It is Tango and Cash. And this is one of those like circumstantial movies for me. It's just because I owned a VHS of it that I saw it so often. But it's one of those movies that, like among several others in this stack, I would just throw on when I was playing, when I just woke up, when I was eating, like just any time during the day, this could get popped into the VCR. And of course, it's got Kurt Russell, Sylvester Stallone. That's a crazy team up for a movie anyway. It's got a ton of awesome character actors, you know, like Clint Howard's in it, Robert Z'Dar, Jack Palance is the villain. So this movie's endlessly quotable. It's got tons of like really memorable moments, crazy shit. I've always kind of wondered why people don't talk about this movie more often, because it's easily one of my favorites. But that kind of takes it back to what I was saying, you know, it was circumstantial. So as much as it's like a 10 out of 10, like classic from the 90s to me, that might just be me. A lot of people might have never even seen this movie, but it's definitely up there for me. So yeah, it's on there for sure. Next is one everybody I think will be familiar with, and that is The Boybs with Tom Hanks. Another one that I owned a VHS of and I could pop in at any time during the day, and often did. I would watch this on repeat. And this one, kind of related to Evil Dead 2, is another movie that made me realize something about movies. In this case, it was the score. And it's the first movie that really made me pay attention to a score and realize how much it could affect the movie. This score on this movie is insane. They do not list the composer here. I know he does a lot of Joe Dante's stuff. And just right out of the gate, when the movie opens, the score starts. It's, you know, like zany, cartoony kind of score, but it uses like sound effects and styles that match what's happening on the screen at the moment. And it'll keep transitioning as the scenes go. And it's just awesome stuff. It's just a small aspect of the movie that has always stuck with me. And I mean, you know, on top of it, it's one of the most quotable movies ever. It's got a great cast. Tom Hanks, Corey Feldman. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have to defend this movie too much on why it's on the list. I think that one's a pretty common one, probably. Next is Big Trouble in Little China. Kurt Russell made the list twice, and I'm not surprised by that. He's one of my favorite 80s and 90s movie stars, and this is not one I owned, but it's one that got a lot of play on TV, and anytime I saw it on, I would pop it on. It's one of my favorite John Carpenter movies. Jack Burton as a main character is one of the best main characters ever, because like he's kind of not the main character, and that's kind of on purpose, you know. I mean, he's like, in any other movie he would be the comic relief, like sidekick, and Wang would be the main character. I mean, Wang is the guy with the actual mission. Jack just wants to like get laid, you know, and Wang is the one who has the fighting skills and the knowledge and the actual like valiant mission to accomplish. And Jack is just kind of there for the ride, never does anything in the movie to move the plot forward. He's just kind of there. But since he's the like classic all-American badass truck driver who always like has something clever and witty to say, he's the guy we kind of follow around in the movie. And, you know, that's genius. So yeah, Big Trouble in Little China. Next is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This is another one that I had on VHS. Could pop in at any time. I'm a huge fan of the show Buffy also. And even though they're kind of like implied to be in the same universe, they're kind of not. This is like its own thing that predates the show. Has a lot of stuff that the show kind of changed. And this is another one that just has like a great cast. You've got like Donald Sutherland, David Arquette, Paul Rubens, Rutger Hauer. You can see like Ben Affleck even as just kind of like a throwaway basketball player who has one line. Super 90s. It's like a vampire movie set in like the Clueless universe. Top tier stuff. Another one I think everybody knows, and I don't have to say too much about it. I mean, it's Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's a great movie, and this is a family video copy. 3 more to go, and the next one is Mallrats. This is my favorite Kevin Smith movie. There are better Kevin Smith movies, I can admit that, but none of them are as perfect as Mallrats is. It's just like a little bit of a hot mess, a little bit of like, I mean, it's like the second movie of an indie filmmaker who blew up, and he just got insane backing to make a second movie, and like this is what that produced. One thing, don't watch the extended cut. I mean, watch it once if you like the movie, but definitely theatrical cut is the way to go with this one. But yeah, great soundtrack, perfect time period for me personally, just that early 90s mall environment. This movie hits a lot of chords with me, you know, like Brody is playing Sega when he wakes up first thing in the morning. I had a Sega. As soon as you get to the mall, you see Ethan Suplee trying to see the hidden image in a magic eye that's like on an easel in the middle of the mall. I remember when that happened, like it must have been a common thing in every mall. I just remember seeing like the easel with the magic eye poster propped up on it for people to like look at next to like a booth of magic eye books. And there's all kinds of little things in this movie like that are just like legit. The like feel of that 90s kind of mall culture, it nails a lot of stuff, little subtle details, you know. And this is a movie I can watch over and over again. Like most of these movies, endlessly quotable. That's a big aspect that I realized a lot of these movies shared. And that's a perfect segue into my second to last pick, which is The Big Lebowski. One of my favorite movies of all time, easily. One of the best movies ever made, in my opinion. I know a lot of people might scoff at that, but it legit is. It's such an insanely well-made movie with so many just random side characters that pop up, flesh themselves out completely, and play into the story. Every bit of dialogue is interesting and hilarious. Like, it's just an insane movie. And the reason that it's probably even on my list is because this movie got tons of play on cable after it failed and kind of disappeared into obscurity. You know, I mean, the guess is that it was a cheap movie to get rights to play, and so they filled time with it. I believe it was TBS that would show this like through the week every day in the morning. So I would just throw this movie on and watched it every day for probably like a year or two, and just that exposure slowly made me appreciate all the details to it, because there are so many. Insane cast. I don't even have to get into that. I mean, John Goodman, it's one of my favorite characters of all time. Walter Sobchak. It's one of the best movies ever made, and I love it. And last, not necessarily best, I kind of put these a little bit in order of like time rather than going in order from like worst to best or whatever, because this is a pretty late game movie. I mean, I wasn't an adult, I was still a kid, probably around 16 or 17 at the time. But yeah, that's Donnie Darko, another one of my favorite movies of all time. This is a flick that I had never heard about. This is pre-internet, so when a new movie was in the process of like gaining a cult status, you didn't have like a website to tell you that. The news just kind of had to roll to you on its own eventually. And the way that happened with me was that I was at Hot Topic one day, and they had this little bin of like, it wasn't a big media section with a lot of choices. It was a little bin with like cult movies that you would find in a Hot Topic, you know, like Pink Floyd, The Wall, Cheech and Chong, Up in Smoke, stuff like that. And I was flipping through it one day and ran into this. And this is not the cover art that was on it. I'm pretty sure it had the OG, like, theatrical art. I read the back, and all it told you basically was that it was about a kid who had an imaginary friend who visited him at night who was a giant bunny that told him to do bad shit. Like, that's all the synopsis pretty much told you. And so I didn't buy it. I immediately rented it because it's a movie that stuck with me. And we've all seen Donnie Darko, right? If you haven't, it's like, I always kind of call it the Dark Souls of movies, if you get that reference. It is a very ambiguous movie, to say the least, that probably lends a lot to its like kind of cult movie status, because it really throws you for a loop. When you watch it the first time, I don't care how smart you are, that first time you watch it, you have no idea what the fuck's going on. It makes you want to watch it over and over to figure out what the fuck's going on. And the beauty of it is that, especially in terms of the theatrical cut, which is my recommended cut, if you're going to watch the movie, don't watch the director's cut. It's fine. It just kind of like adds in transition scenes that explain what's going on a little bit. But with the theatrical cut, the cut we all saw originally, all the information to figure out what's happening isn't even there. It's all like a book that you would have had to have read or go seek out and read after the fact. And it's a book about theoretical dimensions and how they might work and stuff. And that information is not in the movie. And what is more likely going to happen after you watch it a few times and are still a little lost is you're going to go look up theories, which I've done, of course. And even still, since it's dealing with like a theoretical concept, it isn't 100% black and white one way or the other. It's an ambiguous movie that has a lot of guesswork. I mean, it's hard to explain. As you can see, I'm doing a horrible job of it. But the point is that this movie is fucking awesome. Because on top of all that, it's set in the 80s. It has an amazing soundtrack. Again, amazing cast. And as I'm talking about it, I realize that I need to rewatch it soon. So yeah, that's it. That's my Rad 9. Hope you got something out of it. Again, I did it because I just thought it was a really cool, unique way to go at a movie list. So props to the Rad Pack guys for coming up with that. Guys and gal, I guess. But yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and until next time.